Kevlar faithful, welcome back on into the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. It's your Cavs encapsulated crew back again, your favorite trio, sitting down, finally getting to talk Cavalier basketball in the off season. We haven't had a whole lot of time to talk face to face since the season has concluded. A lot has happened since then. A lot will be talked about now and moving forward in the future. What I want to start with here, I know we've had our personal thoughts about, some off-season development so far. This is just our first general wrap-up, so to say, of some of the storylines that have come out, who we're hearing from in the industry, what Kobe Altman has said, everything of that nature. So, Justin, I want to propose this question to you first, then we'll go to Logan. I will preface this by saying, when we usually run polls on Twitter, there's not this much of an even divide. So I put this out earlier today. Who do you want as the Cavs' next head coach? Atkinson, Borrego, other. This is pretty split down the middle as far as you're going to see on social media surrounding the Cavalier head coaching vacancy. I think there's some interesting points for both of these candidates. There's also plenty of other people to talk about. I want to kick this off with you first, Justin. Your initial thoughts with JB being gone, who should step up and be the next head coach as far as who we should hire?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously a lot of stuff has transpired since the end of the season, JB being gone now, and us looking into new head coaches. I guess my biggest thing is that at least of the two names that were listed there, it seems to be those are the top coaching candidates. Now, I do have Chris Quinn as someone on my short list that I would put pretty close up there with the likes of Atkinson and Borrego. But, yeah, it's tough to really get into coaching stuff because when you come out of football season and you're like, all right, who's the next big coach? You look at offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, right? And so that makes the job a lot easier. And when you go to the basketball level, if there's an assistant head coach, maybe that makes it a little bit easier. But more often than not, like trying to find, guys that are offensive minded or defensive minded, they're just assistant coaches more often than not. And then, of course, you have a couple of coaches who are seasoned guys. The guy who was with the Suns now, Frank, Logan, help me with his name.
Frank Vogel?
Yeah, Vogel. I'm sorry, why couldn't I think of his last name? There are some of those guys out there as well who have a tenured resume, but just haven't been great. So it makes that kind of search and final decision really tough almost. But, of course, I think for the Cavs, you're looking for that offensive-minded guy. And it looks like Borrego right now is the leading candidate. Maybe, he's in today and yesterday, I believe, or today and tomorrow. So we'll see how that turns out. But maybe we know by the end of the week who our new head coach is, but it seems like Atkinson and Borrego. And honestly, Borrego's my top choice just from what I've heard and seen from people is he's very offensive-minded. The team that he got dealt in Charlotte wasn't great, mainly because it was young and, outside of probably wanting to talk about LaMelo Ball being their best player, not a lot going on there for him to work with as opposed to coming here with all the talent that is. So I'd be interested to have Borrego be the guy, but we'll see.
And just for a little bit more context here, this was something that was put out by the Real Cavs fans over on Twitter. So this was something that Windhorst talked about today. Borrego in town yesterday and today. Atkinson in for in-person interview on Wednesday. Two front runners. Borrego's had extensive interviews with the Lakers, but has not received an offer. There's going to be competition between the Cavs and the Lakers for James Borrego. And he also went on to say, Windhorst, that the Cavs job is perceived to be a little bit of a better destination compared to the Lakers. You're going to have more of a headache over there. Maybe the Cavs are willing to offer some more, monetary value as far as our vacancy. Logan, what's interesting to me about just what I've heard via text from some of our discussions, I think me and you are on the same page where maybe a lot of fans might be on the same page as well, that none of these candidates, you could take the whole entirety of the list, are really like an overwhelming, upfront home run out of the park hire. I want to hear more about how you feel regarding that situation and how you've been approaching, your thoughts surrounding the new head coach.
Sure. First off, as much as crap as we gave him, I'll thank Jay Bickerstaff for his time with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Nonetheless, where he ended up, where we wanted to be, it didn't quite correlate, didn't quite come all together. But I will give him credit for taking the Cavaliers to that next step, giving these young guys the right development that they needed to take this next step. We need the guy that's going to take us to the further step than the next step. So,
Right.
Thanks, JB, for your time, but it's time to move on. But here's the problem. With these candidates we're looking at, I mentioned this to Justin and Jeffrey. Are these guys going to go past 3 years? Is this going to be like another? I don't want a transition coach. I want a long-term coach, a coach for the future. I want a Steve Kerr. I want an Eric Spoelstra. And of course, those come around in a blue moon. I get that. I totally understand that. But I think people need to take this coaching thing as seriously as possible. At the end of the day, you're not going to have candidates that were available in last summer that you will this summer. You're not going to have those kind of candidates, guys like Mike Budenholzer, guys like that, guys like Nick Nurse that were available last year. Now, I know you can tell me all you want to hear about Nick Nurse. Justin's not a big fan of him. I get that. But my point is established championship coaches were available. Those aren't there this year. But then you have to look at, the tree, right? You have Chris Quinn coming from the Miami branch. You have James Borrego was a Spurs assistant for a long time. Kenny Atkinson out with the Warriors. I lean more Atkinson, mainly because I love what he did with Brooklyn with very limited things. People can tell me, James Borrego, he was dealt a bad hand. I wouldn't say Atkinson had himself, a good hand himself, but he was able to will that team to the playoffs. Now, that being said, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I'm not as excited about this whole coaching thing as I thought I would be, because the only coach I ever wanted, and I know it's a total sham. It's not going to happen. It's a dream. I want to see what we'd get from JJ Redick. I want to be that crazy person that kind of sees what happens with a guy who hasn't coached in the NBA yet. I think I said to Justin and Jeffrey, I think Redick has a potential to be a Steve Nash as a coach or a Steve Kerr. I think he's a great X's and O's guys. We don't know what he offers as far as keeping the locker room together and things of that nature. But I'm always a big proponent of guys who have been there, who have played in this league, who know what the players are going for, coaching the team. I've always been a supporter of that, especially when you have personalities like we do. When you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell, when you have guys like Evan Mobley, who's young, figuring out his way, when you have guys like Darius Garland, who obviously we'll get into the core four talk later. To me, whoever they hire, fine. Just get it right. That's all I can say. I mean, they know way more than this kid sitting in his freaking room at home knows. Like, I'm not going to know crap about these candidates at the end of the day. They'll know who the right fit is. I just hope they get it right. It can't be a transition coach.
It's just such a weird spot where your dynamic is in a position that is really not favorable. I think that everybody ends up being a little bit wrong in this situation, because JB, at the same time, everyone kind of ends up being a little bit right. It doesn't really make sense, but JB wasn't the guy. We knew we needed to move on from him, but you don't have a high pedigree of available coaches on the market to hire. Okay, that kind of throws a wrench in the plans as well. You definitely had better candidates last year, like you said. Nick Nurse is eminently more qualified than any of these guys. Budenholzer is probably even more qualified than that. When I think about it, and I hope to be wrong, I don't see how let's just say Borrego and Atkinson are the two front runners, which is basically confirmed at this point. And they're not going to even look at anyone else. I don't really see how hiring one over the other makes a huge, huge difference. And I think that that's an issue. I think that if that's your pool of people to pick from, where if you have to do, and every front office is going to do the due diligence, but it hasn't been leaked that there's a steady front runner, that they want this guy, because there's not that caliber of guy. Throwing it back to the Redick discussion. Here's my argument for JJ Redick. And like Logan said, it's not going to happen. I don't even think we're interviewing him.
No.
Has not been one leak about it, which I think is gross misconduct that we're not interviewing him. Why would you not bring him in for an interview? Maybe he impresses you in an interview. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You all right, okay, you didn't like it. He says no. Rumors
What's
get
the
out.
worst a girl can say to you, right? Is no.
Well, it's like what's but like, all right, I get it. You have rumors that, all right, maybe Redick, what, we have a leak, you have a rumor leak that was going to happen anyway. It's just at this point with this roster, and this is kind of a segue transition. If you gave Borrego this roster, if you gave Atkinson this roster, if you gave maybe anybody on this coaching candidate list this roster, I think that any of these names could make us a 4 seed. And that's not saying that wouldn't be like, I think that's a decent accomplishment in the NBA is getting a home playoff series. But at the end of the day, JB got this team to a 4 seed 2 years in a row in the Eastern Conference and still got let go. So is Redick going to be a good NBA head coach? It's undetermined. But if I'm almost fully confident if Redick was the head coach of this team, we would at least be a 4 seed or better. And that's just how I'm looking at the situation. That is not how people get hired. That's not how the front office is doing their due diligence. I understand. But when it kind of sounds like, hey, we're not really shaking up the roster, well, you kind of know what you're getting from these guys, albeit Donovan Mitchell has to sign an extension. Justin, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, my only thing is Borrego, Atkinson, they're assistant coaches, and I think both of them had to take over places that, again, like Logan said, Brooklyn wasn't great, and Charlotte certainly wasn't good before they even got LaMelo. So, again, those guys struggle, and yeah, they're not like Nick Nurse or Budenholzer, but I think Budenholzer is the only one you can go back to and be like, yeah, he had a legitimate NBA coaching career, whereas Nick Nurse fell into the lap of a team that was already a 59-team win the year before. So getting Kawhi Leonard as your, saving grace and then
goes a long way.
Kind of performing worse and worse year in and year out is kind of not my thing. But again, it's one of those things where we don't know what the X's and O's of basketball really mean when you're talking about coaching, because again, you can listen to JJ Redick on his podcast, or you could listen to James Borrego in the huddle, but are we really going to understand the minutia of all that kind of stuff? No. Again, like Logan was saying, hopefully the front office guys know more than we do, because if they don't, we're in trouble. But at the same time,
they shouldn't be there. Like plain and simple, right?
Yeah.
And going off of that though, this is the same skeleton to the best of my knowledge. It's still at least the leading guy. This is the same front office that hired John Beilein. Like it's not like that. That this is this is not the first coaching search. Yes. This is not the first coach, but I don't know. That's different though. A college head coach, absolutely.
At least the guy has coaching preference.
Well,
JJ's sitting on the couch.
Beilein hasn't been in the NBA though. He hasn't played a game.
But he coached players.
Let's put it this way.
What is JJ doing outside of sitting on the
discourse?
couch?
I like it. Let's go.
Let's put it this way. Regardless how you feel about that, they literally gave John Beilein a 5-year contract.
Yeah, and that's
the most egregious thing. You're not giving JJ Redick a 5-year contract.
LeBron. That's them getting a completely new roster, them thinking, hey, a college guy with a bunch of young players, this will probably work out. The line of thought is good. The end product, not so great. I think the line of thought with JJ Redick is bad, and I think you're hoping for something really good, because Steve Kerr, guy who was an executive before he was a coach, Jason Kidd on the coaching bench before he was a coach, Steve Nash, I think, is that example of a guy who went from not doing anything to becoming a head coach and just absolutely being awful at it. So
many people thought Nash was going to be a good coach. So, I mean, that's fair.
And maybe he gets screwed because he has all those egos in Brooklyn and whatnot. But again, and I don't even know if that was his first coaching job, but wherever he was before that, was he with Milwaukee, or am I thinking of Kidd still?
I don't think Nash was ever.
I think Brooklyn was his first job. But
the end of the day, though, Justin, I agree with you that Redick is a non-story if you have other candidates. Like, the only reason we're talking about him is because I don't know if the team performs exponentially better under Atkinson or Borrego than they do under Redick. And that might be a foolish thing to say, but I'm not 100% sold that it's the case.
My only other thing with JJ, and here's where I would take the swing on him. If Mitchell doesn't sign the extension, then everyone else on this roster is so far away from being like a player who needs to win now that I wouldn't mind bringing JJ Redick in. I think the idea of bringing JJ Redick in a win now situation is awful because you're throwing him into the deep end on his first year. And again, some people swim, but I would most likely drown in that situation considering all the different things that you have going on. And so for me, it just, at the end of the day, I think even if you're telling, hey, there's a chance Donovan leaves, or hey, there's a chance Garland leaves, or Allen's not gone, or Allen's not here, at least you still have a core of guys that are better than most of the situations that they have been in already.
And I think a lot of that, before we move on to the core four, a lot of that is perception versus reality and what the front office actually thinks. And I think what is very bothersome to me is that, unfortunately, in my opinion, the Donovan Mitchell extension is a prerequisite. Let's put it this way. It's a prerequisite to moving forward, but it's not like the end all be all. He could sign the Supermax, and a year from now, if we lose in the first round, he could be asking out. I don't think people are really thinking about that because that is a nightmare scenario. I totally understand. It's not fun to think about as a fan, but you can't really move forward until he signs. But him signing doesn't mean that, okay, this timeline has another 4 years.
Sure.
Absolutely not the case. But Logan, I want to come to you. Let's go back over to X. Couple more tweets. First one here. Windhorse on Biggs. Another transcribing from Real Cavs fan, doing good work out there. Go shoot him a follow over on X. But this is from Windhorse again. Believes Kobe wants to keep the two bigs together. I'm showing this first because it's all related. Believes Kobe wants to keep the two bigs together, but figuring out Mobley at center is important. Okay, a little bit of nuance there. The Cavs need to make Mobley their center, even though he does not want to play center. They have to figure out a way to do so. Okay, kind of messy. A little bit messy, in my opinion. We'll get your thoughts here, Logan, right after I read the second tweet. This is about Darius Garland from Windhorse. There are now teams that are sort of backing off, saying, well, maybe Garland is not going to be available. So let's take these just from face value. If you read that, doesn't sound like the bigs want to get split up per Kobe. It doesn't sound like Garland's available per Kobe. The only logical conclusion is there, unless he's coming off the top rope and trading Donovan, don't think so. The core four is going to be back. I would just your general thoughts about that.
I'll start with this. Winnie's been bugging me lately, and I told you about that. I don't know. I don't like his cocky, his confidence, the way he kind of hates on his hometown team pretty freaking often. I don't know. Winnie's been bugging me. So he also has been switching up his reports left and right and center. So I don't know what to believe anymore. Let's just take it for this. Core four comes back. That's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, I'm a fan of the core four. I like all the players. Fit and how much further can we get with this core four? Oh, that's the question nobody wants to ask. Everybody's like, oh, it's fine. Garland had a broken jaw. He lost 15 pounds. He all this, that, and the other. Mobley is going to develop. It's like y'all are banking on something that just might not be there. I mean, just plain and simple. And I'd love to win the lottery, and I bank on it, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. I love the core four for what they are and the excitement they bring and all of that jazz. I get that. But sometimes 4 players on a court with one basketball just simply doesn't work. It just simply doesn't work. And Darius Garland, listen, I'd love to give the guy another year. He's one of my favorite players, and I get that it doesn't make a lot of sense to be trashing on him and things of that nature. But I don't know. There was nothing about last season that gives me any hope for him going forward with him and Mitchell. I don't know if it's Darius' fault. I don't know if it's Donovan's fault. There's just something that's just not right with Darius Garland, and I don't like it going forward. Mobley showed me some promise in the Celtics series, and in fact, honestly, Mobley and that Celtics series in general gave me some hope for the Cavaliers for the future. But then you have Jared Allen who doesn't play, and then you wonder, like, I'm sorry. I'm just like, there's so many question marks all the time with this core four. And I think it would just be easier if you shrink it to a core three, or the heck you want to call it, a big three, and find the complementary pieces. I don't think we're ever going to find that true three. This has been a thing that we have talked about, gentlemen, since I first started coming on your guys' show. Before it was even called CAVS Encapsulated, you guys just covered the Cavaliers, the Cleveland Pulse podcast. We still didn't have a freaking three that made sense long-term for this team. We had it with Lowry, had to get Donovan, move on, whatever. I get it. We attempted that. But I swear we haven't had one. I mean, Strus is what, 6'5", 6'6". Okoro 6'5", 6'6". These guys are not threes. Right. And to me, if you want to address that problem and address the position that honestly in a lot of ways is one of the most important positions in all of basketball, is a lanky 3-and-D, true 3-and-D, lanky, tall wing. When you have one of those in your team, you're looking good. If it costs you Garland, if it costs you Allen, and you get some other guys in return, I just think it's worth it, because to me, I think we have seen how far the core four will get you. We might get to the second round. Hell, we could get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I get that, and I hate to destroy something that is so organically grown, right? You get Allen in a trade where you traded for a bag of chips. You draft Garland, you draft Mobley. You in your heart of hearts want to see it all come together and rejoice. The Cavaliers are NBA champions. They did it the right way. But sometimes in the NBA, it's just not that way. And I think people, as much as it stings, you have to make these types of moves to go any further. Like with the coaching thing, right? We were just talking a second ago. Maybe Redick isn't the right choice. Maybe you don't need to be sexy with that pick. I get that. You can just pick a guy that knows X's and O's and is going to get the offense rolling and rumble, and I get that. But don't make the new coach the excuse to keep the core four together.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yes.
It took me about 30 minutes to get there, but I got there.
Justin, same question to you, core four?
Well, I think starting off with that last point, I'm more worried that the reason why a guy like Garland isn't available and why I'm more okay with bringing the core four back is I would hate to undersell, and that's just the sense that I'm getting. Garland should be far more valuable in reality in skills and whatnot to Allen, but Allen being a center is far more valuable to the rest of the league than a skilled guard. And that's just what has been out there and has been said. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And my big thing is like, would I be okay with either one of those two being gone? Sure. I would be less okay with Garland being gone, but in the sense that he's one of my favorite players. That's why I'd be upset. I'd actually be more upset with trading Allen away for a small forward, because at the end of the day, my biggest gripe with this team for the past 2 and probably even longer years has been the fact that no one else on the team outside of Allen and outside of Mobley want to grab more than 5 rebounds. And trading Allen away for a 3, let's put the Brandon Ingram trade out there. You trade those two just straight up. What are you doing at the 4 and 5 next year? Are you moving Ingram to 4 and then still playing Strus at the 3? Like, who's going to fill in? And is he going to rebound 8+ boards? Who's going to make up for the 10 boards that we're losing? And again, for me personally, guys like Okoro, guys like Strus, these guys should be going for rebounds like it's nothing. But they just don't. And I have not seen that out of this team. And maybe that was a coaching thing. Who knows? But if you trade Allen away, you have to get at least someone who is in caliber, maybe not just as good, but right there next to him, and then get a center to replace him or get a forward to replace him. Because again, you lose out on so much of what he actually provides by trading him. Garland, I think you could maybe get someone that is, at the 3, Mikal Bridges. We talked about that being a straight up trade that I don't think is going to happen. That would be great. For one, that'd be great. But when you're talking about this team and the things that are issues, going up against the Knicks last year, getting completely manhandled and out-rebounded, going up against a Celtics team this year that was just physically more dominant, I don't like the idea of trading Allen away for scraps or trading him for a position that, yes, do we need a 3? Yeah, but I think there are players out there that are worth a Karis LeVert and a pick, or some sort of packaging that gets you that 3. But at the end of the day, I don't think bringing back the core 4 is bad, because last year, and, Logan touched on it with Garland's jaw and other players, but this was the least amount of games that they played this year. And then you talk about in the playoffs, you get 3 games without Allen for the Orlando series. And then you get him to miss the entire Celtics series, 5 games. So he's missed 8 games in the playoffs. And then you get Donovan, after winning game 2, misses the next 3 games. I'm sorry, it's 5 games. Yeah, that made sense.
He played 3 and then he missed 4 and 5, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then, again, your core 4 got you to the core 4 this year essentially got you to the second round of the playoffs, and basically in the same spot that you were last year with the Knicks, where you win 1 game on the road and then you lose the rest. And I think, for that matter, not having Donovan, not having Allen, that's big. That's huge. And again, I think saying we've seen where they can get us, not necessarily true. I think, again, players like Niang being there and being someone who for a while was a big contributor in minutes in the first playoff series, guys like Strus who weren't really hitting their stride until towards the end of the series, and just trying to figure out who's going to work where. Okoro, again, kind of just shrinking in the playoffs. I think, again, trying to fit the right players and pieces around them is still something that we were talking about last offseason. And again, Strus, right idea. I think he showed flashes and still has potential. Niang, right idea, wrong outcome. And again, my biggest issue with the Niang signing was, okay, he's just Kevin Love, but he doesn't rebound. So you kind of just got worse in that sense. So again, we're going into another offseason.
And you gave him a 3-year deal.
Yeah. And again, we're going into another year where you have to get a 3. You have to get a big that is, dependent on the Allen situation.
You have to get a big.
That's a real backup big, not Niang at 6'8" and not moving his feet.
Damian Jones is 7 foot.
And you're not sold on Okoro. You're not sold on LeVert totally. You're not sold on.
And at least LeVert has.
You're sold on Merrill for half the year.
Okay, I will concede you this then, Justin. Bring back the core 4, fine. Like, I'm not mad about the core 4 coming back. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. Right. Here is the thing, though. Dude, like, rip off some Band-Aids. Yeah. LeVert doesn't fit this team. Niang can't keep up on a basketball court. Plain and simple. CPJ has potential. Play his ass. Like,
I
get a backup big. But here's the problem, Justin. Everybody, I tweet like once every 3 months. At the trade deadline, I said PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford look damn good in wine and gold. And people told me that was a lateral move. They're playing for the big gold trophy right now. We're sitting on our ass. It doesn't need.
And they've looked totally different. That team has looked totally different since they've acquired them.
33-12 since they made those trades.
It's not like they just are hanging out and are there.
Yes, you don't need to do anything sexy per se, but you have to do things drastic. You need to find the things that we don't have. We haven't had a backup big in 3 or 4 freaking years. I cannot stand that. Ever since Kevin Love, since we let go of Kevin Love, we haven't had a backup big. We can't seem to get one. Here's Ed Davis. Here's Damian Jones. Oh, Robin Lopez. Anybody? Come on, like get a backup big. Get a 3. The issue is you don't have a lot of tradable pieces, so you go back to the core 4. That's why I go back to the core 4. You're like, okay, in order to get anything that we actually need, we might have to lose something that we don't need a lot of. So then you go back to the core 4 and you go, oh, who can we trade? Who can do this to get where we need to actually get where we need to be? But the fact of the matter is the bench is a total blend of misfits that do not make sense on this team, on the floor together. So bring back the core 4, totally fine. But Kobe, you got some freaking work to do this offseason. And I think this team can be any better next year.
I think I wholly agree with you. And again, those are things that we've been here, fine. But those are things that we've been talking about. And again, if you're completely right, Logan, if you're bringing back the core 4, other moves have to be made. I'm not okay with us just standing pat, but I know that there are free agents out there that, again, you lose a Caris LeVert. Let's just say you trade him, and the one big one out there right now is like you trade him for DeAndre Hunter. And there's your small forward.
That's intriguing.
There's your small forward. The Hawks are all you have to do for that is send Karras and send a pick. And that's getting you a guy that's going to be your starting 3. You move Strus to the bench, have him come off the bench. Already you have a completely different dynamic to work with. Mm-hmm. I think that there are obviously other things that you can look at, but signing a free agent like a Buddy Hield, who is a 3-point shooter. Again, Karis LeVert wasn't a 3-point shooter. He kind of just pounded the ball as hard as he could until something rocked. And I've never liked that. And for me, I just don't see a place on the roster when you have a Garland and a Mitchell who take up most of that objective already. Now, getting a shooter who's just going to shoot 6 to however many threes a game, that's what you want. That's what you kind of wanted Strus to do. That's kind of what we wanted Merrill to do. But again, when they are not multifaceted, and Merrill, you saw him get put into a box in that Celtics series, and they kind of took him out of the way. At least Buddy Hield is a proven product in the postseason and in the regular season for not just being a 3-point shooter, but being an all-around bucket getter, which again, you could talk bucket getter. You could talk about Karis LeVert being a bucket getter, having 40-plus point games, but there's also the times where he goes from 40 points to like 7, 5, not even showing up in the stat box or whatever. But for me, I'm very much with you that they need to make a move. I don't know what it is, and I don't know now if it's likely that you even get a big-time move. So lots of things to have happen and a lot of domino pieces that need to fall into place before we can really get to that. So,
well, unfortunately, I'm going to be in the minority of this conversation. I sincerely do not think there's any way that you could just run this starting 5 back. And I know you guys kind of touched on that as far as shuffling some pieces around. I do not think you can have DG, Donovan, Mobley, and Allen all in the starting lineup next year and have people like be serious. I think that it's nice to like think about that and talk like that because you don't want to blow up something that is somewhat organically built. And I get all the arguments. You don't want to trade DG and then he goes and is an all-star for somebody else, which very well might happen if he's the dominant ball handler and he's working with one other big. And this is just the risks that you run as far as when you have to move talent around. At the end of the day, yes, you made an improvement in the playoffs, but that Orlando series could really have gone either way. You get outscored in the totality of that series, and sure, you take a road game in Boston, and I know that that's going to be like the moral victory all off season long that, it's 2 games into the finals and we looked a lot better than Dallas. Give me a break with that. That's absolute nonsense in my opinion. Unfortunately, before we wrap up here, Kobe Altman is in the most difficult position any general manager could be in pro sports, period. Every single one of these people was his decision. And you can see how he acts when he has loyalty and he was the front-running guy as far as when people have a perception of our front office, who do they think of? Kobe Altman. You can see how he operates. He drafted Darius Garland. He drafted Evan Mobley. He drafted Isaac Okoro. He traded for Mitchell. He traded for Allen. He traded for Strus. He signed Niang. He got rid of JB, even though he hired JB. Now he's going to hire a new guy. Being able to do some self-reflection and say, hey, these are all my guys and a change still needs to be made is extremely difficult. And that's why I think that you have these headlines coming out saying, well, no one's really available. The 2 bigs we're just going to try to work with. Garland's off the table. I will leave this as a parting thought. For people who have been around the Cleveland Cavalier fan base block for an extended period of time, I'm talking nearly a decade. This is my biggest fear. And I know this is random and very hypothetical, but this is my biggest fear. If you extend Donovan and Clutch Sports comes out and says, Darius Garland would like a trade, and you don't do that, I will be insufferable on all social media apps because you were the first person when Kyrie Irving requested a trade to go out and send him off to Boston for pennies on the dollar back. That will be a disgusting display of hypocrisy, and I'm not going to stand for it. And yeah, that's a little dramatic. I don't really care anymore because at the end of the day, I know you drafted him. And Kyrie Irving, he was going to be a little road bum. But when the guy's agent is asking out before an extension's even inked, it's really not a good start. Like I said, very hypothetical, but that's my 2 cents. Very interesting discussion. Absolutely loved it. Anybody have any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
Logan?
Go Cavs, baby. Let's go.
Okay. These dominoes are going to fall, though. You're going to have coach, draft, trade, if any.
Oh, yeah. I want to see a different look next year. The passion I'm speaking with is because I think this Cavs team is right there. But they're only right there if they grow the balls to make the move. If they rip off some Band-Aids, like I said, and say, you know what, screw it, the fans are right. Not talking about us. I'm talking about all of Cleveland that ran JB out of town. At the end of the day, they're right. He's not the coach of the future. People who aren't on the side of some of the guys that just aren't a fit for this team, plain and simple, whether they're talented or not, good players, all solid players, I love them all because they're Cavaliers, don't fit this team. This team is right there. They are. You can kind of feel it. Absolutely, the window's open. But here's the thing. All those moves we made, fantastic moves. Pretty solid draft picks as well, okay, for the most part. Here's the deal. Donovan Mitchell's only here for so long. Why are we sitting on our hands ever since getting Donovan Mitchell? Marcus Morris Sr., Danny Green, Max Strus, George Niang, Damian freaking Jones, and Ty Jerome. Is that really all you could do ever since getting Donovan Mitchell? Tristan Thompson.
TB Thompson.
Oh, Tristan Thompson.
And I understand that, but it's not like Donovan is 23 or 24, and I get it. He'll be 28 going into the season. By no means is that old for an NBA player. But like I said, if you don't have playoff success and it comes around next year and he's 29 going to the next season, let's say he even signs an extension and gives us 2 more years and nothing happened, he's 30 years old. You think he's going to sit around and wait for 2 or 3 more years for however many years the max contract is? Absolutely not.
Probably not. So you got to cash in while you have the chance. You got to really step back and evaluate this team and admit where they are, where they're going to be. This is a team that'll always be in the playoffs. Fact of the matter is we should have April games, May games in Cleveland for years to come. But I don't know about June. I think they're a move or 2 away from June. And I think if they are able to just kind of do it, just like really, this offseason's a big offseason. Forget next offseason. Forget about last offseason's issues. Maybe we didn't do enough. I get that. But at the time, I thought we did enough moves. I thought, okay, we'll grab guys later in the season. We didn't. So suddenly, because of your inability to add to this team, because you sat on your hands and stood pat at the trade deadline because you're 18-2 in 20 games, you now have yourself a bigger headache this offseason. This team should look different. We're going to have a new head coach. There should be excitement in the air, but that's only going to happen if the Cavaliers get serious. And right now, all the reports I'm seeing that, we're just going to go in there again. Here we go, guys. No. A rallying cry doesn't do me crap. I want some change. If core 4 can stay, fine. Have it. Have your core 4. But I better see changes all across the board. This Cavaliers team has all the potential to be good. Stick with us, and we'll see where they're at here in a couple of months.
I think it's just very interesting because I can compare this situation to the Celtics as of right now. If you think about the Celtics team that is current here with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, how long has it been with them? How long have they been together? How long have they been a 2017-2018 duo that I believe was still with Kyrie Irving at that time? And again, it took them, I believe, 4 years, and not even with Brad Stevens at that point, to get to the finals. So it takes time. It really does. And I think, obviously, the Donovan Mitchell contract is the biggest key to your future. If he doesn't re-sign, then, yeah, I think you're in a position of – and he makes it known that he's just not coming back. Then, yeah, you're in a position to trade him and to not restart, but hopefully maybe get someone or some pieces to – complement the guys that are still here. That being said, if you do get Donovan Mitchell to re-sign, you have, depending on how many years, a lot of time to figure things out and to try to make some bigger moves. Again, the Celtics did not trade guys like Marcus Smart and who am I thinking of that I can't? Who was the other big player that was there for so long? But anyways, like a guy like Marcus Smart can be compared.
Robert Williams was another big name.
Yeah, you're right.
Didn't want to lose, but you had to do it.
Exactly. And those guys, they went how many years with those guys until they finally decided, hey, now, and the combination of those players before they decided, okay, now we need to make that move. Because again, this is only year 2 of us being in the playoffs. And again, you improved each year since Donovan's been here with all the injuries that had come into play this past year. So I think if you get Donovan, there's a big sigh of relief, because then you can kind of just take it and be like, all right, we're in it. We're in the East. We're in a very easy place to get to the finals. You just have to figure out everything else after that.
Absolutely. Well, Cavs Encapsulated Crew is back. Off-season mode has been activated. Riveting discussion. Lots of good thoughts here. Lots of different opinions, I think, just from all factors and sides of the fan base. It's going to be interesting. It's going to feel so long this offseason, waiting for October, but I'm not totally opposed to it yet. There's going to be storylines developing and things are going to happen. I don't know what those things may be, but I think they're going to develop rather quickly compared to how long we wait for them to happen, and then we'll go from there. But if you made it this long in the video, make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you subscribe down below. Comment, general thoughts, coaching, core 4, what moves need to be made, a head coach we didn't talk about. Should Terry Stotts be on the radar? I'm seeing a lot of informed opinions over social media, YouTube, Twitter this past couple of weeks, and it's been really refreshing. I've been really having a good time with it. But it's going to be all for us in this episode. With that being said, we appreciate you being the pulse of it all. Peace.